Hi, everybody. I'm actually 2 minutes early today. Um, interesting, interesting happenings in our world. Mm. So, welcome to Healing with Marcus. I am Shaman Marcus, and I do these lives so far every Saturday. I was hoping to move it to Fridays, but that's not working out. So I'm here on Saturdays right now, and we'll see how long that's going to last. But for a while, I hope you are well. I hope you can feel into your heart. Hope you can sit in your inner space. And if you can't, I'm here to help guide you in that direction. Some of these videos are about light working. We're light workers unite, right? We go deep within ourselves and we learn both about ourselves and our relationship to the world and our place in the universe. And on some levels, our place in the universe is that of peacekeepers. If you identify as a light worker, what we want to learn how to do is to move into our own higher vibration. We want to learn, how can I sit and be in more peace with myself? How can I sit and dissolve the trauma and the different wounding and injuries that are present in me, so my mind doesn't have to be so strong all the time? I believe that it's a fairly big fallacy that we have to learn to control our mind. I believe it's a big fallacy that we have learned that you got to control your mind not to think certain thoughts. Because, of course, it's good to learn temperance. It's good to learn that just because I'm angry doesn't always give me the right to go out and punch somebody. Just because I'm angry doesn't give me the right to go out and scream at people. It's more important to look into yourself. If you call yourself a light worker, it's more important to look at what's going on within you. And of course, there are things in the outside world that are going to cause issues. There are things out there that are hard to deal with for us. They're going to trigger us. They're going to make us want to react. And to a certain degree, there's nothing wrong with that either, right? Absolutely nothing wrong with reacting at times. There's nothing wrong with anything that's going on with you. But if we want to learn how to, or we want to help to heal the vibration of our world, we want to help raise the vibration of our world, we need to learn how to sit in our own higher vibration first. That we can sit and try to change the outside world so that we will be happier all day long. If you haven't found your inner peace, it doesn't really matter what's going to change on the outside. You're still going to be unhappy because your mind will find other things to be unhappy about, even if there was peace everywhere, which is, of course, the scary part if we look at it from one perspective. So we have different perspectives to look at things, right? We have a level of internal peace, internal stillness, and internal healing. We have another level that's society peace, right? And if we look at what's going on in the world right now, there are some pretty hard things going on out there. There's a lot of forcing of things against people's wills or will. And of course, to me, that's very unhealthy. The way I view the world is very unhealthy to make people either inject something in their system or to attack the convoy in Canada the way it's being attacked right now. I believe it's very unhealthy when a society says, yeah, we have the right to force these people not to protest. We have a right to make them follow our will. And personally, I think that's very unhealthy. I thought it was very unhealthy when, the oil companies in North Dakota used police forces, militarized police, to disperse the protesters and the water keepers, mostly from a Native American side, but also many people who supported them. They would be using rubber bullets and water cannons in freezing cold weather, and sound cannons, and stuff like that. And that's very unhealthy, right? That's very, very unpleasant. And there is no reason why we need to act in such ways. There are reasons why we need to have an open communication, why we can debate certain things, why we can communicate. And much like if somebody is in a relationship, hi, whoever came on board, hi, welcome. Whenever you are in a relationship, if we look at how our society is trying to solve things, they say, well, send the police on them, send the military on them, make them follow our will. And if we compare that to a relationship, Sarah Riley, good to see you. New Zealand is in the house. Welcome on board. Mm, yes. So when we look at if you're in a relationship and you want to force the other person to do it exactly the way you want it to be done, and then you bring out the big guns, you start screaming, and then if they don't do that, you start hitting. We know it's very unhealthy to do that. We know it's a very low level of communication, and it's illegal, but it's also really unpleasant. It's not much. There's not much love in it, not much understanding, not much compassion, and not much tolerance. While if we can communicate with our loved one, instead of going all angry, we can communicate, and we can say, I don't feel heard right now. I don't feel seen. Or I think we're going down the wrong path. Or I think you're doing something unhealthy. Or I think you're doing something that could hurt us. Then, the other person gets a chance to express themselves. But when we don't give the other person that chance, it's not a real relationship. We're not in a relationship anymore. We're in some sort of war between two forces. And that's sort of what we got going on in the world, right? When governments decide we're going to force people to do this or that, there's no democracy left when they're forcing people. There's no healthy communication, no open line of communication. When one side says, I'm going to force. No, I haven't. What is happening in New Zealand at the moment? Is it similar to Canada? I sure hope not. But I haven't seen what's going on down there. If you want to write, I'll wait. So we have Sarah, who is in New Zealand, is reporting to us about what's happening down there. Because my take on all of this is that oh my God, so it's similar to Canada. I'm sorry to hear that. Yep, that's not cool at all. When we are looking at the movement in our world for forced injections, it's an extremely undemocratic movement. Even if half the world would want the other half to do exactly what they want, that's not democracy, right? Democracy is when we communicate and everybody feels heard and everybody is heard. Now, it doesn't mean that we have to do everything that everybody wants, because that's going to probably be impossible. Thank you, Sarah. Thank you. Um, the convoy is similar to Canada to drop mandates. Oh, so they have a similar thing going on in New Zealand. Okay. Well, I hope that, I mean, I hope I'm all for freedom, right? I'm all for individual choice. And I'm all for your integrity in your body to decide for yourself what you want to do. The people have set up a village on our parliament grounds at the capital. Oh, that's beautiful. Wow. That's beautiful, Sarah. And thank you for saying that. So there is the thing about this push, right? So when we have a push, the way it's been pushed now, the injections have been pushed on everybody, there is going to be a counteraction, a counter reaction. It's turned into a festival. That's beautiful. It could be that we're able to hold a high enough vibration to turn that festival into a light worker movement. Because that's sort of why I'm sitting here, right? Is that I want to help us, me and you and everybody else, to sit in a higher vibration so that we don't fall to the lower frequencies of anger, of negativity, of you're gonna have to do what I want. Because either side, right? Even if or choice. But if I were to go out there and and fight people over it and not want to, of course I'll listen to their reasoning, but I will not change my mind unless there is a sufficient reasoning. And for me, I listen a lot to intuition, and I listen a lot to how I feel about certain things. And in this particular case, my feelings have been very clear. Pretty amazing, Sarah. Yes, that's very amazing. I'm very happy to hear that, because New Zealand was a little bit like Australia in a way, right? Where it was very hard control going on from the government. And what I find fascinating is that we have left out of the debate from almost any either side. It seems like I could have just have missed it, but it seems like people are not realizing how undemocratic these movements are. Like the push to make everybody inject themselves, how undemocratic it is. That when a sufficient amount of people really don't want to do it, but the government just says, nope, we're going to do it anyway. And if you don't do it, you're going to lose your job. To me, that's a very unhealthy movement. There's very little respect in that. There's a lot of disrespect towards the individual's rights, which is part of why I ended up falling in love with this country in America, because, and I have thought a lot about it and I have felt into it a lot. And of course, you can argue against that as much as you want. New Zealand has had maximum control. Yeah. Our government has a strict narrative to conquer COVID. Yeah, absolutely. It's just that that strict narrative is, I believe, false. I don't believe that it's the best way to solve this problem. I don't believe that the narrative from the governments of our world are right on. And I also kind of believe that most of them have been lobbied to by from the big corporations, because there is almost no better business idea than to inject 7 or 8 billion people with a vaccine that the taxpayers are paying for, and it goes straight into the big corporations' pockets. It's a very strong, good business idea if you look at it from a profit point of view. Um, uh, and also the fact that COVID is a pretty hard disease to get. Almost every work industry has been mandated to be jabbed. Yeah, and that to me is horrible. I think it's horrible when you mandate anything of this nature, especially when it's not, when it's basically a experimental drug. If I mean, maybe if it was a very established drug, maybe, but I still wouldn't be again. I would never be for a mandate. I don't. Children can't play sports without being jabbed. Yeah, and to me, I'm like, are you guys? To me, it's insanity. To me, it's like a frenzy, almost like a school of fish that just goes nuts over one particular thing, and they think they're going to solve it all by just fighting harder. And to me, it's like that's untrue. That's not true, and it's a very low vibration solution. It is not your high energy solution at all. It's not love. It's not compassion. It's not true healing. Yeah, you may be able to, but the thing is, if the jab worked, maybe it would work to keep the vid in check. But since it doesn't really work, it's very easy to see that they're pushing something that still doesn't heal you, help you from. You still had to wear a mask. You still could not. You still could carry it. You could still get sick, and you could still end up in the hospital to the same degree that the people who didn't get jabbed. And you could also give it to other people, right? So If that's, if you're mandating something that's not really working, there are other forces at play here. If you were mandating something that worked, I could understand it better. But because I see it's not working, you know, and now many places have dropped all the mask mandates. Many places have dropped all the mandates for the jab as well. And personally, I believe that's completely the right way to go. I completely believe that the full shutdown that we were doing and the full isolation and the full on mask wearing had very little results. And I only base that on, on, yeah, I hope they drop it before that. That's crazy, Sarah. Um, the no, I lost my train of thought right there, but it'll come back up. The energy of mandating these things, like I would be against any mandate that would require anybody to inject something in their system. And that's because I'm for your right as an individual to make up your own mind. No worries, Sarah. It's all good. It's all good. Don't worry about it. Um, because the highest form of integrity is yourself, right? That's your self will and your body. And if you are not able to or allowed to determine what goes into your body, we're not living in a free society. We're not living in a free country. We're not living in any kind of freedom. Oh, that's what I was saying, was that what made me fall in love with this country in particular. And we can argue that till the sun goes down, right? Like you can argue how wrong I am because they weren't, all people were not included in the original document that was the Declaration of Independence, but specifically states that every man, in that case it was man, it's either the wording they used or they actually believed it. I'm not sure, but if we consider the times when it was written, a lot of people expressed themselves in that way. So I'm not sure if we need to judge it as harshly as we do now, as we want to do nowadays. But if we look at the intention, that it's every man's right to pursue happiness and that they have a right to themselves, right? That they have certain undeniable rights for their being, for their personhood. That, because it's in the constitution of the country, the founding documents of the country, there is an awareness in America of your individual freedom. And yes, it can be completely used the wrong way, and it can completely be used to be, belligerent to anything, right? But it also has a founding fundamental freedom built into it. And the countries, at least where I'm from, Sweden and Europe, they don't have any of that built into it. There's no fundamental respect for your rights as an individual. In Sweden, if you owe a company money, they will report you to the government. The government will, if you don't pay, show up with the cops and take things out of your home and then auction it off, and that goes towards your debt. And that could be toward, if you owe a small company or a big corporation or the government, they will come and take your stuff forcefully with the police and then sell it at an auction. Now, of course, well, no, actually, I still don't believe that's right. I don't think that's correct in any way, shape, or form. Um, but I do believe that there are, of course, we should try and pay people if we owe them money. Of course we should. But should we ruin somebody's life because they owe somebody money? No, we should not. Especially not if it's a large entity that is already making a living from loaning out money. That's sort of a risk they take, right? If you look at money and loaning out money, spiritually speaking, there is sort of a suggestion that I learned from a spiritual movement I was a part of, and there are many religions that talk about it this way too. Um, if you can't afford to loan out the money that somebody's asking for, if you can't, or give it away, if you can't afford to give somebody the money you want to loan out to them, don't do it. And because then you don't have enough to give away. And don't expect to get it back. If they turn around and give it back to you, view that as a gift as well. And if they don't let that get in the way of your friendship to this person. Because it's your responsibility if you decide to loan out your money. And if the person can't afford to pay you back, you can't really make them. It's not really your responsibility to pay yourself back, right? Your responsibility ends with yourself. So if you can't afford to give it away, don't loan it out. If you can, do it, but don't expect to get it back. And if it comes back, be grateful. That's a very spiritual approach. In society, of course, that's not very popular. Of course, that's not how we live our lives. You signed that dotted line. You owe this corporation all your money. You owe this corporation half your life. Even if you paid, like in my case, I took a loan in 2001. The village that's been set up by the protesters is operating with donations. Free food. Oh, that's wonderful. Wow. Amazing. It sounds like a very cool, like a really interesting way of shifting our society, maybe. It could possibly be shifting our awareness if we're lucky. All the things that happen in society, if we look at it from a healthy point of view, a healing point of view, we can learn and become aware that this is another expression of the human growth process. So when the jab mandates come out and they are mandating, and then other people are now forced to look at themselves and be like, well, do I want to go with the crowd and not what I feel, which, so many people did, right? Or do I want to stand strong in my own inner feelings and my intuition, what it's telling me, and stand on my own 2 feet? So it's really a call for us to grow up. It's a calling for us to learn to stand on our own 2 feet, be responsible for ourselves, be responsible for what's going on inside of us. And if we can grow and we can learn more. If we can't, it's going to happen again until we learn. And most likely, I'm hoping, praying, holding in a high vibration that the governments of the world learns to approach, which probably is a pipe dream. Probably I'm being naive, but I'm hoping that they can learn. The governments can learn that they're approaching this the wrong way. That force and control doesn't help, doesn't work, doesn't create a good society, doesn't create a positive expression. So Sarah Riley writes, there's so many there who have lost their jobs from all fields. They have even got a medic tent and a schooling space and so much more. That's amazing. That's very exciting. I will look into that. So she's writing to us that in New Zealand, they have set up a village outside of the parliament to kind of protest the jabs and to stand for freedom, individual rights. And it is operating with no cash and everything is for free. And they have a medic tent and a schooling space and so much other stuff. So in a way, it is a little bit like Occupy Wall Street, that in 2011, Occupy Wall Street was a movement that started on Wall Street with a group of women who went out and protested the operations of Wall Street, how Wall Street functioned, how the loaning system, how the banking system, how it works. Because it was after the 2008 and 2009 crash, and the banks were bailed out by taxpayers, while the taxpayers themselves got to sit with the horrible aftermath of the banking crash that was caused by the banks that then were bailed out. So on so many levels, it's very crazy. They've planted gardens, set up, etc. All this in less than 2 weeks. They've blocked off roads and tow truck drivers are refusing to tow. The police do not know what to do. So that to me is a beautiful expression. I am very excited. Thank you for sharing that, Sarah. I'm excited to hear that because to me, it's a little like it's a tricky situation because nobody wants to lose their jobs. But when we look at how Nazi Germany could happen, We look at, and many of us, during the Nuremberg trial, they were saying that some people were just following orders. And we have said that about soldiers in Iraq and in Afghanistan. We have said that in many places that, oh, they were just following orders. The police they were just following orders. And sometimes then you see a police that has a little more sense of morale and a little higher ethics, and they stand up against their colleagues, and they actually say, no, I'm not going to hurt this person just because you want to do that. I'm not going to do this or that because you want to do that. And now it says that tow truck drivers are refusing to tow. To me, it means that they have a lot of, we could call it civil courage. They are brave to stand on their own 2 feet, and they're listening to what they want, not what they're being told. And on so many levels, when we can withstand or stand up against what we're being told, we are being free individuals. And in reality, who you really are is a free individual. You're a free expression of life force energy itself. That's who all of us are. All of us are an expression of life itself. And when we operate as a group the way we do in society, and when we blindly follow orders, we're not a free individual standing our own ground, standing in our integrity. We're committing violence and crimes towards other people based on what somebody's telling me. That's not a very free individual, neither one. So I'm very excited for the movements that are happening. Hopefully, it'll lead to something very positive. Let's see, Sarah writes, the police have organized free parking close by in the stadium, asking them to move. Wait. The police have organized free parking close by in the stadium, asking them to move. But the village is also set up on the road, such as portaloos, showers, info tent. You'll love to see the lives. Yes. Cool. I'll check that out. Sarah's going to share some lives from New Zealand, some channels. And I'm very excited to hear these news, because I feel that the more we can stand up and think for ourselves, the more the human spirit has a chance. So when we look at the genocides that have taken place throughout our history, either you look at, one way, of course, the Nazis were horrible, right? And it was a very terrible thing that happened. You can't emphasize that enough. Most likely, to me, it was the industrialization behind the killings, and they weren't trying to change people; they were trying to kill them. They were trying to eradicate a whole group of people. And to me, that was a very terrible thing. To most of us, that was horrible. But what we kind of miss is that, and I've said this before, but I'm saying it again: Stalin, Russia, killed, I think, 30 million people in starvation and through the work camps. England, by taking all the food from India, they owned India, right? They had colonized India, which is really, they invaded India. They colonized India and took, during World War II, when England couldn't get enough food into their country from other sources, they took food from India, and they took so much that, like, millions and millions and millions, I think it was 10 million Indians or something like that, died in starvation because of England. But because we want to keep England the good guy, we don't talk about that. We don't talk about the atrocities that we commit to other people. We don't talk about, and this is kind of maybe going off topic a tad, but we don't talk about, it's a kind of pointing out propaganda, right? It's pointing out how the propaganda in our world has programmed us to think that we are the good ones and they are the bad ones. But we don't talk about that after the attack of 9/11, which, of course, in my world was not a real attack, right? In my world, it was all orchestrated. But what happened after that was that America attacked Iraq, and first Afghanistan and then Iraq. And from the 3,300 people who died in the towers, and then you have, what was it, 3,000 soldiers plus. I mean, it was more after a while, but after about 10 years, 3,000 soldiers or something had died. And then you ended up, then after 3,000 American soldiers that lost their lives. We were all very sad, not realizing that in Iraq there were like, I think, well, the numbers are hard to tell because there are many different numbers being thrown around there. But if you look it up on Google or Wiki, you will see that there was between 450,000 to over a million point two Iraqis that died in the American occupation, and the American soldiers that died were maybe 4,000. That discrepancy is incredible. The amount of human lives that we eradicated and that we barely lost any ourselves is terrible. But we don't talk about it because we don't want to have that kind of fact out there. We want to believe we're the good people. We want to believe we're the good guys. And of course, to a certain degree, there's a lot of good here. There's, without a doubt, there's a lot of good. But we need to see the truth the way it is, not the way the media and the narrative wants us to believe in it. And that's the same thing that's going on around the disease and the jabbing. It's a narrative, and we're being told a narrative that we need to follow according to the public officials, and that narrative is true, not truth, not truthful. Let's see, Sarah Riley. Hare Krishna area is really popular with their food and chants. There's a range of religions being embraced as well as diverse people. Some are extremists, but their own security are keeping things at peace. Wow, that sounds like they're creating a very, very cool community on the square of New Zealand. Yeah, yes, lots of Iraqi civilians died. Yeah, and that's the thing. We don't talk about that. So if I was a regular Iraqi and I had a country as big as America come and invade our country, and then I'd see how many of our own people died, it'd be hard to forgive. It'd be hard to not be angry and hateful. Of course, that's still the solution, but the numbers are very hard to fathom. So, on many levels, we are not being told the truth. We're not seeing the numbers, the truths, and there's a lot going on in our world. There are many manipulations going on everywhere. Um, Back in the day, before business changed and business became more globalized, Sweden and most likely New Zealand too, for that matter, and many other countries were criticizing Saudi Arabia and China and Russia, of course, but Saudi Arabia for breaking human rights and for not respecting women's rights. And we would also be criticizing China a lot. Many countries would publicly criticize China for killing their inmates, their prisoners, and for torturing prisoners and inmates to make them change their minds so they weren't against the Communist Party. And that in itself, what we don't see is that, like, the last 20 years ago, there was a lot of criticism of those countries. Slowly that stopped. Slowly we became silent about it. And slowly Saudi Arabia became an American partner. And slowly China isn't being criticized anymore over that. Because now we have so much business in common, and there's a push in the West that the governments want more control, so they are looking more at how Sweden and China are running their countries. The MSM are reporting any glimpse they can to make the protester camping look like nutters. Yep, absolutely. And that's the thing. The media has a very skewed narrative, and they have an agenda. There's no doubt that there's an agenda going on. And that's the thing about the agenda that I can see now, is that we have been saying how great and amazing Sweden is. Many people here have heard so many great things about Sweden from the media, and we don't really hear much about China, but we don't hear the criticism either anymore. And that's because we don't. Our governments they are moving in that direction. They want that kind of control, and the narrative of the media is very, very propagandistic and in control. So if we can raise our minds, if we can also, now we're coming back full circle into Lightworkers Unite. Now we're coming back into what is the solution then? And how is it that, because I found that I love listening to Russell Brand, I love listening to Joe Rogan, I love listening to these guys who are pretty much middle of the road people, but they take examples from either side and they say, look at this. This is actual truth. Um, and I love that some people are doing it. Now, I have also noticed that if I listen to that all the time, if I fill my brain with that, or even if I fill the brain with conspiracy theories, or if I fill my brain with the narrative of the public media or the normal media, or whatever you want to call it, liberal media, if either one you fill your brain with, the world is going to look horrible. The world's going to look like a messed up place. And if you go out into nature and you reconnect with the ocean, with the trees, with the park, with the grass, with the hills, with the mountains, with the lakes, animals, all kinds of animals, birds, deer, whatever you can find, when you connect deep within to those energies, our human world, human society doesn't look so bad and it's not so horrible. And we can step out of the picture. But when we feed ourselves the negativity of either side, it's very easy to get that knot in the stomach and feel bad. So sometimes it's very healthy for us to turn off the media. I turn it off all the time. Try to never start my day listening to any of those people, anyone, even though I love some of them, right? Like I said, I love Russell Brand and I love Joe Rogan, and I think they're awesome. I think they're standing for what they believe to be real deep truths. And I think it's very brave and strong. But I still don't want to fill my mind with it because it's a frequency that doesn't make me feel very good. It's a frequency of non-peace. And as I move my awareness into my own heart and heal and sit in that space, I can, of course, still keep an eye on things and know where I stand. But I don't have to work myself up over things that I cannot control. I don't have to give my power away to things I cannot change. So, anyway, I feel like that might be it for the day. So, the Lightworkers Unite is that we sit here together. We know that when we come into our heart space, we vibrate higher. We know that we go deeper into ourselves. And when we do, we help the world. When you come from a peaceful place, other people around you will feel that peace. Thank you, Sarah. I love your frequency as well. Thank you. Thank you. So, this is, I believe, the solution. Find your peace, find your heart love, find your love in your heart. Heal your traumas, heal your chakra centers, heal your root chakra, your sacral chakra. Find your own power, sit in your own power, and move into a higher sphere of vibration. As you do, you affect the whole field of awareness. All right, dears. All right, everybody. Sarah Riley, thank you for being a great part of this. Thank you, everybody else who are going to watch this. So much love, so much strength, and so much power. Namaste and aho. Thank you, Sarah. Bye bye.